People fear what they do not understand. Death has always been the greatest mystery. I was never the god of death. That honor belongs to Thanatos, gentle, beautiful Thanatos, who carries souls as softly as sleep. I rule the domain they all go to, the rich, the poor, the innocent, the cruel, the hero, the coward, the dead. For centuries, Hades, the Greek god of the underworld, has been cast as a villain. In modern eyes, he's often seen as a devilish figure lurking in flames, a sinister force of evil and death. But that idea isn't necessarily the truth. The association likely comes from how we've blended Greek mythology with later religious symbolism. Ruler of the dead must be Satan. Controls the underworld must be wicked. But in Greek mythology, Hades wasn't evil. He was just inevitable. Disney's 1997 Hercules movie took liberties with the stories of the god. Zeus was portrayed as a loyal father, Hera as a loving mother, and Hades? He was a fast-talking villain with flaming blue hair. In reality, Zeus was a serial adulterer. Hera despised Heracles for being Zeus' illegitimate child, and Hades, far from being the family outcast, was the most stable of them all. While Zeus and Poseidon stormed through their domains, leaving chaos in their wake, Hades ruled his realm with precision, order, and perhaps most surprisingly, integrity. The truth is, Hades didn't enjoy a golden throne atop Mount Olympus. He didn't hurl lightning or cause earthquakes. He didn't interfere in mortal affairs for sport. He had one domain, the Underworld. A place not of fire and brimstone, but a vast and intricate realm where all souls eventually came, heroes and villains alike. What made Hades so feared wasn't malice, it was inevitability. Mortals feared death, and by extension, the god who governed it. He became taboo. His name was whispered, avoided, buried beneath euphemisms. No one prayed to Hades, not because he was cruel, but because his power could not be bargained with. You could plead with Zeus to send rain, or Poseidon to calm the sea, but death was unyielding. And yet, the underworld wasn't all doom. The souls of the departed arrived under the escort of Hermes, were ferried across the river Styx by the grim Charon, paid with coins placed on their eyes or tongues, and judged by 3 divine arbiters. Based on their deeds, they were sent to Elysium for paradise, Asphodel Meadows for neutrality, or Tartarus for punishment. Some even found themselves in the fields of mourning, grieving lost loves for eternity. The system wasn't perfect, but it was fair, and Hades ensured it remained that way. Still, for all his dedication to justice and balance, one story continues to haunt his legacy, the abduction of Persephone. The tale begins with a promise. Zeus, Persephone's father, gave Hades permission to marry her, but in typical Zeus fashion, he neglected to mention it to the 2 most important people affected, Persephone herself and her mother Demeter, the goddess of the harvest. So when Persephone was taken to the underworld without warning, chaos ensued. Demeter scoured the earth for her daughter, and in her grief, she stopped nourishing the land. Crops failed, people starved, and suddenly the living world was starting to resemble the dead one. Zeus, pressured by the suffering of mortals, ordered Hades to return Persephone. But by then, the story had taken a turn no one expected, because underground, something had changed. Contrary to the popular image of Persephone as a weeping captive bride, ancient sources tell a deeper story, that she didn't remain that way for long. Hades, unlike most gods, treated her with dignity. He did not rape her like Zeus or Poseidon had done to others. He did not dominate her. He offered her a throne. He gave her equal rule. In a mythological world where women were often prizes, Persephone was a partner, and what began as shock and resistance slowly transformed into something else. In the darkness of the underworld, Persephone began to understand the truth of her own power. Up above, she had been the maiden, the daughter, the flower-picking girl in her mother's shadow. But below, she was queen. She held authority. Even the dead feared and respected her. The underworld didn't break her, it revealed her. The relationship, while born from flawed beginnings, became one of mutual respect. Persephone wasn't simply coping, she was ruling. Together, she and Hades created a balanced world for the dead, maintaining order with care and fairness. Hades was loyal to her in a pantheon where fidelity was rare. He shared his power with her, and she grew to love him, not despite the underworld, but because of what it awakened in her. When Zeus finally demanded Persephone's return, Hades had no choice but to comply. But fate, by then, had already intervened. During her time in the underworld, Persephone had grown hungry and had 6 seeds from a pomegranate. It seemed a small act, even innocent, but the rules of the underworld were ancient and unyielding. To eat the food of the dead was to bind oneself to that realm. Persephone was unaware of the consequences, so a compromise was struck. For 6 months of the year, 1 for each seed, she would dwell with Hades in the underworld. For the other 6, she would return to her mother above. And so began the eternal cycle, 6 months of bloom and 6 of barrenness. Not punishment, not exile, but balance, the rhythm of the seasons, born from a love that existed between 2 worlds. It's tempting to see the story as another tragedy, yet another woman taken, forced to live in a man's world. But in truth, Persephone is not a victim. If anything, she is the embodiment of duality, the goddess of life and death, spring and shadow. And Hades, far from being her jailer, was the first to recognize and nurture that complexity. In fact, some of the oldest surviving myths suggest Persephone ruled the underworld before Hades was even associated with it. Her many epithets and the reluctance of ancient Greeks to speak her name suggest deep reverence, if not outright fear. But together, they ruled, and their story is not one of darkness and evil. It's one of balance, transformation, and unexpected love. Hades wasn't the villain. He was the steady hand in a pantheon of chaos. While others chased glory, he governed the dead with dignity. He gave Persephone a crown. He didn't need to be worshipped, and perhaps that's why he never was. But misunderstood? Absolutely. Today, we still struggle to separate death from evil, quiet from cruelty, the unknown from the monstrous. And so Hades remains demonized, because he reminds us of the truth we most fear. Death is certain, and no amount of prayer can change that. But if we look closer, not through the lens of flame and pitchforks, but through ancient eyes, we'll find something surprising. A god who kept his realm in perfect order, a ruler who respected his queen, a love story that defied every norm of its time, and perhaps most importantly, a reminder that not all who dwell in shadow are wicked. Some are just doing their job, quietly and without the need for praise. If you've ever feared the dark, maybe it's because you never truly understood what lives within it. Hades wasn't evil. He was just the god who drew the short straw and made the most of it. And Persephone? She didn't just survive the underworld. She made it her kingdom. Do you think Hades was the true villain? Or was he the only god who played by the rules? Comment below and let us know which myth would you like to hear next.